The storm outside rattled the windows as Lena pushed open the narrow attic door of her grandmother's Victorian house. For years, she had been warned never to go up there, but with her grandmother gone and the house now hers, curiosity gnawed at her. The air was thick and heavy, filled with dust and mildew. Wooden beams loomed above her like skeletons, and every box seemed to whisper of forgotten decades. In the far corner sat a large cedar trunk with brass latches, its wood darkened by time and carved with roses. Something about it seemed to call her. She knelt and flipped the latch open. The creak echoed in the silence as a cloud of dust rose. Inside, wrapped in brittle tissue paper, lay a wedding dress. Unlike everything else in the attic, it looked perfect. Silk that shimmered faintly in the dim light, delicate lace sleeves, and a veil still attached. A faint scent of roses drifted from it, fresh and sweet despite years in the dark. Lena brought it downstairs, unable to resist. She hung it in her bedroom and stared at how the moonlight caught the fabric. It almost looked alive, the way the gown seemed to breathe with the shadows. Against her better judgment, she tried it on. The gown slid over her skin with unnatural ease, fitting her perfectly as though made for her. She twirled once, smiling nervously, then froze. In the mirror, another figure stood behind her. A pale woman in the same gown, lips tinged blue, hollow eyes fixed on Lena's reflection. Lena spun around. The room was empty, silent except for the low groan of the house settling. Shaken, she stripped off the dress and shoved it onto the hanger. That night, sleep would not come easily. She woke to the soft swish of fabric. At the foot of her bed stood the gown, upright, as if worn by someone invisible. The veil shifted slightly, though no hands held it, and a voice colder than ice whispered, "It was mine." Lena screamed, bolting from the room. She spent the night on the couch, trembling until morning. When she dared to check her room again, the dress hung neatly in the wardrobe, but the hem was stained with something dark, something that looked like dried blood. Terrified, Lena went to her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Halloway. At first, the woman refused to speak, but finally she whispered the truth. "That dress belonged to Eleanor, your great-aunt. She was to be married in this house, 60 years ago. But she disappeared on the morning of her wedding. They said she ran away, but not everyone believed it." That night, Lena dreamed vividly. She saw Eleanor pacing in the attic in the same gown, clutching her throat, eyes filled with terror. Lena awoke gasping, the faint smell of roses still in the air. Desperate to end it, she dragged the gown to the backyard and lit a fire. The flames roared as the silk blackened. For a moment, relief washed over her, until a scream erupted from the fire. It was sharp, agonized, and impossibly human. The gown twisted violently within the flames, and a ghostly face appeared, Eleanor's, contorted with rage. Then, just as suddenly, the fire died, leaving only ashes. But when Lena returned inside, her blood ran cold. The gown hung once more in her wardrobe, flawless, untouched. Over the following nights, the torment grew worse. Sobs echoed through the house. Mirrors showed Eleanor's lifeless eyes staring back. Once, Lena woke to find herself half-dressed in the gown, invisible hands forcing her arms into the sleeves. When Emily and her fiancé James purchased Blackwood Manor, they thought it would be the perfect place to start their lives together. The mansion was old, ivy creeping across its stone walls, and though it carried a reputation for being unlucky, they dismissed the gossip. To Emily, the house had charm, especially when she discovered a forgotten wardrobe in one of the upstairs bedrooms. Inside was a wedding dress unlike any she had seen. It was extravagant, lace layered over silk, with a veil so long it trailed across the floor. Emily gasped at its beauty. Though yellowed with age, the gown seemed almost alive in her hands, the fabric cool and strangely heavy. Tucked in the veil was a dried rose, still faintly fragrant. James laughed at her fascination. "Creepy hand-me-down," he said, but Emily couldn't let it go. She hung the gown carefully in their bedroom. That night, she dreamed vividly. In her dream, she walked down an aisle wearing the same dress. At the end stood James, but when he lifted the veil, his eyes were gone, and his mouth twisted into a scream. She woke shaking, her skin clammy. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. The veil would appear draped over her bed, though she never moved it. Once, she caught her reflection in the mirror wearing the gown, even though she was dressed in pajamas. The reflection's eyes weren't hers, they were cold, unfamiliar. One evening, she asked a local historian about the dress. His expression darkened. That gown belonged to Margaret Blackwood. She was to marry here in 1923. On the morning of her wedding, the groom never arrived. Hours later, she was found dead in that gown, the veil wrapped tightly around her neck. Some claimed she took her own life. Others whispered something darker, that the house claimed her. Emily tried to ignore it, but the veil began to appear more often. Once, she woke with it tangled around her throat, tightening until she clawed it free. James dismissed her fears until he saw it for himself. He woke in the middle of the night to find Emily standing by the mirror, wearing the gown, her eyes vacant, whispering in a voice not her own, "He left me at the altar. But you won't leave." Terrified, James pulled the gown off her, but the fabric burned his hands. He swore he saw a woman's face form in the veil, lips curling into a sinister smile. They decided to burn it. But when they lit the fire, the gown refused to burn. The flames only flickered, and a scream echoed through the room. The veil whipped violently, wrapping around Emily's arm, leaving a deep, purple bruise. Emily realized the truth. Margaret's spirit was bound to the veil, reliving her betrayal, searching for someone to take her place. That night, Emily dreamed of walking down the aisle again. But this time, when the veil lifted, she saw not James, but a pale woman with hollow eyes, whispering, "Now you are mine." Emily woke with the veil covering her face, suffocating her. James ripped it away, but the fabric left faint finger-like burns across her cheeks. Desperate, Emily tried returning the veil to the wardrobe, locking it inside. The house grew silent for a time. But weeks later, during a storm, James found Emily gone. He searched frantically, finally finding her in the upstairs bedroom, wearing the gown once again. Her eyes were blank, her lips moving in a whisper, "Till death do us part." The veil tightened around her throat before James could reach her. He swore he saw a shadowy bride standing behind her, smiling. By morning, Emily was gone. The gown hung neatly in the wardrobe once again, waiting. And anyone who visits Blackwood Manor swears they hear soft sobbing from the bedroom. If you open the wardrobe, the gown still hangs there, veil drifting gently as though moved by invisible hands.